Welcome back. You're watching Taking Stock, and the market clearly is at the higher end of the range that we have been seeing for last many weeks. Our guests are still with us. Jyoti, what about the risk factors for this market? We have a Bihar election which is fiercely fought. We don't know what's going to happen there. And of course, we still have that Fed rate hike, whether that will happen or not. What is the bigger risk factor? Is it global or is it domestic?
I would think the bigger risk factor is still global, because essentially what has happened to the Fed is, from a general consensus that we'll have one rate hike in this calendar year, now the expectations have moved out to way into next year. So, it's only when you go till March that people think there's at least a 50% chance of a rate hike. And it's only late next year that the consensus is building a hike for sure. So I think the risk is with the Fed meeting, if the talk suddenly from a market point of view, which now is very, very dovish, they may perceive that this is more hawkish than what they were building in. You could see a correction in global markets, and India would be part of it. Because just remember, a lot of this move which has happened has been a very global move. It's not really been an India-specific move as such. So I think that clearly is a risk. The Bihar election is a risk, but my view is that assembly elections, if we look at a long-term history, they very rarely had a very significant long-term impact on the market. So Bihar election is clearly a risk near-term, but it's not probably something which will, we'll remember 6 months later that, oh, Bihar was the turning point and the market direction changed because of it.
Okay, fair enough. Bala, if you had to give us 2 or 3 stocks that you would recommend for trade next week or even in the next fortnight, what would they be?
Yeah, I think HUL is looking quite positive, and that's the frontline stock. Even Bosch is looking positive. I think the leadership needs to spread much across, but at the moment, these are the names that are looking positive from the index stocks. But if beyond the index, there is something like a Bajaj Corp, which is looking quite positive. If it were to close above 430, I think we are looking at record highs for Bajaj Corp. So these are the 3 names I am looking at this point of time.
Okay, Jyoti, you said that you're not as bullish on exporters as you were, or you believe they may not give you as much money from here on, and you did say you were bullish on autos. What about metals? Do you think that cycle is turning? Because we have seen some trading gains, but valuation-wise, some of these stocks are still cheap. Do you think that's a good bet right now?
Yeah, Anuj, my view is playing China is quite dangerous. At least playing China investments is not worth it, because very secularly they are going to slow their whole investment cycle. And with China being whatever 40-50% of the whole global metal consumption, I think commodity prices are going to remain lower for longer. So I've been for the last 2 years very bearish on metals, and I just continue to be bearish. Though stocks may look attractive, it's just that if you don't get these commodity prices move up, and the chances are they go down more, then you're not really going to make too much money in these stocks.
What about the telecom stocks, Jyoti? I mean, Idea was one of the biggest losers last week, and we have Bharti that will announce numbers next week. But the management commentary was extremely cautious from Idea. Is this a space that you would buy into every dip, or would you start to get a bit worried now?
Actually, it's a space again I don't like, Sonia. I don't like telecom because there's just one big competitor which is going to come in the next whatever matter of a quarter or something. And once that competitor comes in, typically you will see some pricing pressure coming through. Probably data prices will be crunched, and all the existing players will start to feel the heat. So they may not lose market share in a hurry, but they'll probably need to take some price cuts to defend their market share. So it is a segment, and I think market has been worried about this for some time. So to some extent it's priced in, but again it's something which over the 6-9 months I think will struggle to perform.
Okay, Jay, any other sector or stocks that look interesting to you? What about sugar, for example? We had big rally in some of the sugar names like Bajaj Hindustan, Sri Renuka. Of course, beaten down stocks, but there was quite a bit of trading pop which was visible.
Yeah, sugar sector as such, I don't think it's a turnaround. I think this is what we are seeing is probably a reflex rally. I think this could continue for a couple of weeks, but I don't think the final bottom is in for the sugar stocks. But looking at other sectors, I'm still positive on the pharma names. The pharma index is almost near the record highs. BSE Healthcare Index is almost near the record highs. Lupin has come near record highs. Continue to be positive on Cipla within the space, and we had projected record highs for Dr. Reddy, and Dr. Reddy is continuing to do well. So pharma names, I'm still positive on it, but I'll stick to the frontline pharma, barring Sun Pharma.
Okay. Jyoti, a word on the earnings season so far. Do you think we are maybe in the last quarter of earnings downgrades and earnings will start to pick up next quarter on? Are we seeing signs of that, or would it be too early to take that call?
Yeah, it's too early because I think, the consensus earnings estimates are still very, very optimistic for this year. So I think we'll get downgrades to FY16 numbers because, FY16 we are still looking at double-digit numbers, whereas we are probably going to end the first half with close to zero or slightly negative numbers. So to that extent, you're probably going to see some downgrades coming through to FY16 numbers in this quarter, and my guess is even in the next quarter. But from the market point of view, what you probably want to see is when this earnings starts turning from 0% and 1% earnings growth, when we go to 7, 8% and 10% and then 15%. So my guess is probably somewhere in the middle of next year we'll see earnings start to move closer to the 10% mark rather than the 1-2% mark, and that's where the market will start pricing a big turnaround in earnings. And once that starts, you probably start seeing hopefully a bit of earnings upgrades coming through. And by the end of next year, we are back to our, India always grows at 15% earnings.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see that growth return. But finally then, Jyoti, wanted your thoughts on the pharmaceutical space because, that's one space that has given you the maximum returns this year. And we continue to see very good earnings from the likes of Cadila Health, etc. Is this a space that you will increase allocation to?
Okay, so for me the pharma space is something which I've liked for quite a long time. My view is that at some point gradually I want to reduce my allocation to pharma, though near term I'm still bullish in them because one of the few sectors where you're seeing earnings growth. But if I have to look like 2 quarters, 4 quarters out, I'll probably be less bullish on pharma than I am now. So it is something which on rises I want to cut my exposure a bit and get into more beaten down sectors.
Okay. Jeff, finally, a chart check on dollar itself, the dollar index and the dollar rupee, where we've seen big gains for rupee of late. Do you see that continuing?
Yeah, if you recall from our conversation about the USD INR in December 2014, I said by the end of 2015 it will be near record highs. It has come close to that, near 67. It has touched 67 at some point in September. I think. It's the weakness in the rupee is going to continue. That's a longer term trend. I think once it closes below 65.5, that is USD INR above 65.5, I think we're going to see the rupee weaken to something like 68, 68.5. But coming to the dollar index, I think it's going to complete a short to medium term correction, and once that is done, I think it's going to strengthen to something like 102, 103. So we are bullish on the dollar and the dollar index. So look, probably that will probably later on be a trigger for the IT sector to perform well.
Okay, Jyoti and Bala, thank you for joining us and taking us through all of your recommendations, your ideas, as well as talking about the markets, both macro and micro. That's all the time we have on this edition of Taking Stock, but we'll see you again with all the market action on Monday morning. Till then, have a good weekend.